that too, and then I think it's, does this contract represent what the city council is to get out of the project?
So,
Yeah, like we've done the
or
legal.
if you want to stay after this, I was mistaken. I had another Franklin project because we're dealing with this.
Okay, let's get underway then. Thank you all for joining us for this. She's online, yeah. For joining us for this December 11th, 2024 iteration of the Local Contract Review Board Subcommittee. If it's all right, I'll get started with roll call for councilors, please.
Mike Riley, Ariel Mendez,
Megan Perkins.
Perfect. Thank you all. And then we can move right into approval of the October 10, 2024 meeting minutes. Those are linked in the agenda if you had not had a chance to review those previously.
move to approve the October 10th, 2024 meeting minutes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Perfect. Thank you all. Without further ado, Sinclair and Ryan, we can get straight into your presentation on the Reed Market and 15th Street roundabout widening project.
So I'll kick us off here just to get us started. And in light of what we were just talking about, I'm happy to skip through the first couple slides, but it's somewhat to address why this is not going to be on consent and on the regular agenda. So just a little bit of a timeline background here. Well, this is the 15th in Reed Lane or Reed Market roundabout widening project. And so we have a dual entry, single exit roundabout there. So it's a hybrid. It's not a single lane roundabout. It's not a full double lane roundabout. But that's the condition it exists in today. And so a little bit of history in the background on this. This intersection goes back quite a bit in time, starting back a little after you can see 2005, 2008. We did our initial Reed Market corridor study, identified a future need for a full 2-lane roundabout there. Time gap there just from the financial crisis and not a lot getting built. But in 2011, we got the first GO bond passed. The whole GO bond value was $30 million. A good portion of that 30 was dedicated to Reed Market, which included this intersection. And so we built a dual entry, single exit roundabout at the time, opened that in 2015. With the anticipation that given capacity growth, we would need to widen this out sometime around 2025. And here's where we are today. Then a couple other things since then. The 2018 transportation system plan update started and went through a couple years of community outreach. This was an identified project through CTAC and through our transportation master plan, and then was further identified to be included in the 2020 GO bond as a part of the larger Reed Market improvement, which includes double laning this roundabout, the 15th and Ferguson roundabout, and then the bridge over the rail on Reed Market. So this, been planning for this for a while now. And this next slide is really.
Just repeat that again on the Ferguson.
Oh, as a part of the GO bond
Yeah.
that the voters passed, we just called it the Reed Market project, but there were 3 components. It's the bridge over the rail.
Mhm.
It's double laning of 15th and Reed and the 15th and Ferguson roundabout just south.
Hiding.
Yeah. So that's also a part of this. It's just the focus with this, we're doing this, one step at a time. So we're taking to council here on the 18th is the initial work to do the double laning of the round.
So the $40 million is on the transportation bond dashboard that's talking about the Reed Market project includes the cost for the Ferguson. Okay.
Yeah. Mhm. All combined. So again, we don't have to sit on this slide for too long, but I know the question has come up regarding the need to double lane something. And Sinclair will talk better about this than I would, but one of the first things we're going to do with the scope of work with our consultant is, is this actually still needed? We anticipate it based on growth, but we're going to have them do a traffic analysis, and we're going to have them determine it is at capacity, or it's going to be at capacity, or here's when it's going to hit capacity, and the timing of whether or not we should do this now. And the results might come back saying, you know what, we don't need it for a couple of years. So that's part of the initial scope. But, transportation system plan policies, and I know Councilor Mendez, you've talked about this before. There's a list of things to consider here. I can't say that these are in order of priority or importance, but this is one of the identified ways to help improve our transportation system, to manage congestion and demand. And you can see item B there is the potential to add capacity through intersection improvements. So we're well aware that there's climate-friendly, equitable community rules, and we're going to be playing in a different ball field than we are in a couple of years. We need to probably do another TSP update. But given the fact that this has been in our identified documents for a long time, and it was approved and funded in the GEO bond, that's kind of the direction we're operating off of today.
Right, if I can on the CFAC,
Yeah.
I think those rules also talk about additional steps we would need to take to add sort of a general vehicle travel lane.
Mhm.
And I don't think it's clear that an intersection improvement that
That's
adds
a question.
capacity
Yeah. Mhm.
is that and would be prohibited under the future CFAC rules anyway. So I think, as Ryan said, increasing capacity to the intersection, both for CFAC and for our TSP policy, seems to be meeting the intent of more capacity without general widening along the full corridor, adding a general purpose vehicle travel lane.
Mhm. So again, happy to pause there if we wanted to talk any more detail about that, but I know we're meeting later as well. But otherwise, I'll hand it over to Sinclair to actually talk about the project itself.
So yeah, as Ryan mentioned, we're going to start off this effort with some traffic modeling. We've, put a lot of infrastructure improvements into Murphy, into Wilson. And so now we're going to take another look at Reed Market and 15th Street and just make sure that those assumptions that we made back when we, did the TSP, when we were, putting together the 15th and Reed Market roundabout initially, if those assumptions still stand. So we're going to take another look at it and just make sure that what we're doing with this project makes sense.
You're not going to change the assumptions that were in the model looking out to the full,
So what we
the 20-year period of the TSP, right? You're just going to say what's happening today.
Yeah, so we've
Relative
gotten
to-
some additional counts with the Reed Bridge project. We're gonna supplement those counts and then base kind of the future growth on those counts today as we know them, and grow them from there rather than base them on numbers before Murphy was built and before Wilson was approved.
Maybe have someone.
How does the medium to long-term view factor into those models? Because, we've heard from other intersection widening questions. If there's a supposed benefit in terms of traffic flow in the near term, given what we see in models citywide, more per capita driving, more driving in general in the aggregate, the presumed benefits don't seem to hold in the, X number of years term. And I'm wondering, how do we factor that in here? Because it seems like we've been here before where we talk about widening intersections, and then 5 years, 7 years, sometimes even only 3 years, we're back to where we were when we started the widening question. So how do we factor in the future look at what the goals are here in terms of traffic flow?
Yeah, I'm happy to. Yeah, so when we do this traffic modeling exercise, there's assumptions, right? There's no other way to do it. So you have to put in an anticipated growth rate over time. And so I think one of the things Sinclair was hitting on there is when we did this before, the Murphy project wasn't complete. We didn't have a bridge over the rail on the south side of this corridor here that we could rely on. So when we remodel this, we'll do a baseline. Here's kind of how it operates today. But then, we're going to have to program a certain percentage of rate growth, and that's going to hit the system. And you don't know what direction everybody's going to turn every time they go there. And yeah, so we usually forecast out a 20-year time span. And I mean, we could run the model on every intersection in town. And if you assume a certain growth rate, every intersection in town will fail at some point.
Mhm.
So it really depends on your definition of failure. So we have some older ways that we would measure traffic data, volume to capacity ratio, level of service. And that's one of the things that the climate friendly rules and other advancements in the transportation modeling world, we're kind of evolving beyond that to some other criteria. But for this one, in this case, yeah, we're going to assume a certain growth rate over time. We're going to assume the Reed Market Bridge over the rail is complete. Wilson is now complete. We're going to, factor in different variables into this thing. And it's going to tell us, what level of service we should expect this thing's going to operate at. And, let's say he gets it built by 27, I will show a schedule 27, 28.
Mhm.
What will it look like in 2035? What will it look like in 2045?
Right.
And it's gonna look at full build out, including all the Stevens Road and Stevens Tract and the 100 acres.
Yeah, where we can't throw in anything that's
Caldera and
not,
southeast.
outside of our UGB, but yeah, we can factor in the knowns right now.
If,
But
you all, the Murphy ramps too, right? The Murphy ramps, that's
Yeah.
I assume that'll
yeah,
be
the full
factored in.
interchange build out. So yeah, and there's even little projects, like there's another GeoBond project is the peril improvements. And then on the transportation fund, we have the Chase Peril, Chase Broster House roundabout where that sharp 9, like that could unload traffic off of Reed Market as well. So it's just a timing issue, and it all depends on what rate of growth we want to apply to it.
And
So
then just to clarify on the previous slide, it's not a hierarchy necessarily, it's a list of
Yeah.
policy,
Yeah.
items to evaluate. Given that there's trade-offs involved,
Yep.
just to clarify, when does the conversation around the trade-offs or balance between different items on this list take place?
So, well, that'll be part of our evaluation. We'll start with the traffic model.
Mhm.
But part of what we'll do with our consultant is, yeah, we're all aware that crossing 2 lanes of traffic is less safe than crossing 1 lane of traffic.
Mhm.
So when we built this thing back in 2010, we installed conduits anticipating the future expansion. So there's conduits in the ground now. Hopefully I put them in the right place. If not, Sinclair will get them in the right place. But we're gonna have these as pedestrian activated traffic lights, just like we have up on Empire. So all from our perspective, these all factor in kind of at the same time as we're developing a design.
So it's not a council judgment.
In terms of which one of these is the most important.
Not necessarily which one is most important, but I mean, if we say, well, we installed conduit to install, I assume RRFs.
Yeah.
Then are we checking a box for item A, or is it, no, I really think it takes more than that to get item A?
Oh, yeah, that's 100% council's call. Yeah, I mean, we'll come to you with the design contract here in a week, and we can have as many check-in points as you want. And ultimately, it's your call to improve or approve the construction contract. And if you don't feel like we've sufficiently addressed one or more of these, then, we would want to know that likely ahead of time, but you can always say no, go back and do something better.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So here we have a kind of a summary of the tasks included in the contract. Mentioned the traffic analysis, and then we'll do a concept design. Once we're finished with the concept design, we'll do some public outreach based on the design we come up with. And it's not necessarily that we're going to be designing it all or nothing. Like it could be a larger hybrid option than what we have today. So it could be that 3 legs have 2 exit lanes, or 2 legs have 2 exit lanes. It's just going to kind of come down to what the model tells us. We have some topographic survey, utility coordination, all the typical items that we have in a contract like this. We do have right-of-way services in here. We're not anticipating needing them, but it's just in case we end up needing a little bit of area, probably for a stormwater pond, just to get the new intersection to drain. And then we have engineering services during construction. So this contract will approve all of the design all the way to 100%, and then some small amount of services during construction. I put together this slide just to kind of give a kind of larger picture of the project context. We're working through a preliminary engineering and environmental review project here, the Reed Market Rail Crossing Elimination Project. Most likely a bridge over the railroad there, shown in blue. And then we have a few key route projects, 15th Street to the south of the 15th Reed Market roundabout, and then 9th Street to the north of Reed Market. And then there's the Bend Bikeway project that goes north of the 15th and Reed Market roundabout. So just trying to give you context on where this project lies in relation to other projects.
I love that you described it as elimination, like just delete.
Yeah. It's all funny.
That's actually the name of the grant that we got from the federal
Yeah.
Crossing
It's
elimination.
a rail crossing
Rail Crossing
elimination.
Elimination Grant. So,
Mhm.
not making it up.
That fits well with the.
Right? Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's what I was gonna say.
Will be eliminated.
Incoming industry.
So the initial portion of this project is going to be the data collection and analysis, first 6 or so months through the middle of next year. And at that point, we'll be having our open house. Once we have our open house, we'll do preliminary design and go through our 90% final design. All the while, we'll be working through right of way if necessary. And then, like Brian mentioned earlier, there'll be another council touch point in early 2026 before we go to construction.
I think maybe to Councilor Mendez's question earlier, though, why isn't there another touch point for us between that construction decision versus the design? I mean, it seems like that if council is gonna want to have some input on this, it's got to happen a lot earlier than because then we're gonna be in a bad situation if we're telling you to do something different than
Mhm, mhm.
what you've spent a year working on.
Yeah, we've approached this a couple different ways. And some geo bond projects, you'll remember, will come to you probably in the middle of that preliminary design. And we'll kind of break this contract into two different phases where we'll say, give us approval to go up to 30%. We'll come back. If the concepts looks good, then give us approval to go to the end. In the big scheme of how we do work traditionally, this is a relatively minor project compared to multi-million-dollar projects. So we weren't anticipating needing to do that, but we're happy to add a star in there anywhere along the way that you would.
Well, I'm just raising that because I think
Yeah.
that's part of what you were
Yeah.
getting at earlier.
My suggestion, Ryan, if we're gonna talk to you about this afternoon, is probably just put another star in
Yeah.
there and do it right, like in the
Where
middle
that-
in the preliminary design at that
course.
percent level. I think it just makes sense given that there's interest in this.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I think we're, speaking for myself, I think there is a significant concern about what happens to safety for pedestrians and
Sure.
bicyclists.
Yeah.
So what's that mean for the design, right? And so, are we improving that or not? And
Mhm.
what are some alternatives to get to a place where we, that maybe are outside the box a little bit of
Sure.
what we traditionally do roundabouts.
Yeah.
But we want to think that's the concern. And safety is a huge concern in the community in all kinds of different ways.
Yeah,
But crossings is, I think, one of the big
Oh,
things
yeah.
I hear regularly in
Mhm.
different ways, and speeds.
I guess I glossed over it a little bit here, but we are, as part of the rail crossing elimination project here in blue, we are looking at a potential undercrossing of Reed Market for bikes and pedestrians to cross near 9th Street here on the east side of the tracks. So that could be another option for folks trying to go north-south in this area of town.
yeah.
Wow, where's that?
This is the concept for Reed Market and.
Wow, okay. But we're gonna come up with more than that.
It's a famous elevated roundabout that has different modes of traffic with basically crossing almost a freeway for motor vehicles and then a roundabout elevated above,
Yeah.
suspended in grand fashion.
Wow, where is that?
Well, it'd go well with the suspension bridges were.
The Netherlands.
No, okay.
Now, this is Portland.
Yeah.
Go over budget real quick. We got the $36.5 million identified in the geo bond for the overall Reed Market project. And then we have just over $1 million in our initial grant from the FRA for the project, bringing us to just over $37.5 million. We are applying for another grant for the rail crossing elimination program. That was in the mid $30 million range. And we should know early next year whether or not we were selected for that money. So this contract is just under $700,000 to get through final design and then provide some construction related services. And then we have our initial contract for the preliminary design and environmental review for the rail crossing elimination work. So total to date, we're just under 2.5 million. And we anticipate our future contracts to be somewhere in the vicinity of $35 million.
Any concerns about the grant portion? What's the grant source that we're applying for?
Federal Rail Administration.
Okay.
And
It's a continuation of the program that we got our original grant from. So we think we're in a pretty good spot to.
We made it through into door one, right? And now door two is the.
When do we hear?
February?
April or March.
Oh,
Yeah, which it'll turn it into an interesting conversation to have as council's getting ready to approve the new biennium budget. So we can have the conversation. If we get the good news, we probably just keep our CIPs the way they're programmed, and at the mid biennium, figure out how to take this 30 some odd $million that's programmed at Reed and how we spread that around other bond work. But no, I keep credit to Sinclair. He's greased the skids really well on this one, and I think BNSF has even given letters of support. They think this is one of their highest priority crossing issues in the state. And yeah, nobody seems to be opposed to this in any way, shape, or form. So we're just competing against other jurisdictions who have similar issues, but I think we're in a good spot.
You know, BNSF actually did throw some money at the project as part of our grant proposal. So there's $100,000 from BNSF there. So.
Is this part of the infrastructure, these ones part of the infrastructure bill? I'm just curious if anybody knows.
Yeah.
They are, so they were part of Biden's.
don't say that.
And it's the rail crossing elimination program has been around for a
But
while.
they put more money in it.
Yeah, I mean, it's an ongoing program that's been around for numerous administrations. It just got a good inject of money and
Since at least another Republican administration.
Yeah.
however far back you want to go.
So I haven't seen it yet while I'm thinking about it. I just wanted to ask, people in the southeast and Old Farm, those are the two neighborhood districts I'm assigned to. They always are asking questions about what's happening with all the other roundabouts.
Yeah.
Since Ferguson's part of this overall project, it might be worth even having a slide that just says,
Oh, Ferguson.
this is the context and all the projects involved, and this is when we think we're going to be getting to it. Because it gives me something to refer back to and be able to say, on this date, they talked about it, go watch this presentation. Or here's the presentation itself. They've asked it multiple different.
That one is also, it could be, I mean, we have stuff in the geo bond, but if development is occurring faster than
We can
we
make-
are building it, sometimes it might be that private development, did we tie that Stevens Ranch or a phasing of the Stevens Ranch?
The 27th in Ferguson.
Not
Right, not 15.
But so 15th, there is nothing really tied to development that we
Yeah.
can peg it to, so that is.
Yeah.
And I, you and I had a back and forth via email and I shared that email with them, but they
Mhm.
keep the questions, they just
Yeah,
keep
no,
repeating them. So just having different
Yeah.
places to refer people to that are more
Wonderful
recent.
visit on Monday at
Yeah.
at the meeting.
Well, and then I went to the district
Yeah.
meeting,
Yeah.
the neighborhood meeting.
So no, that's a common theme. So that's a great idea. We can mention that in the
Yeah.
context of, again, this contract is really only for the design of the roundabout.
No, I know, but it
It's
was-
just one piece of the.
the go bonds
contract.
funding these projects, I
Yeah.
think it helps them see just the context and timing.
Mhm.
Holy cow, there's over $1 trillion for the road crossing elimination grant program.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Man,
Been spent.
do it.
So,
Thank you.
mentioned it a couple times, but we're doing some public outreach as part of the project. Some early engagement with flyers and open house, both virtual and in person. And then we'll be updating our website at critical milestones once we get our design underway. And that's what I had for the project. Got our famous bananas out there. Roundabout.
Is that what they're actually
Is there googly eyes on them?
That's what that is. A
I
banana.
don't think you're actually supposed to be.
That's-
I think they're like versions of moons, kind
Okay.
of, yeah. So,
Other questions, comments?
Thank you for pursuing the grant.
Okay,
okay.
we can move on. Is Carrie ready?
She is, I think she's probably right out the door. She said,
Okay.
just tell me when to come in, because it looks familiar, yeah.
So then, yeah, we'll move on to the only pedestrian and bike improvements project. There are 3 different contracts being considered for contract
Got
amendments.
some clear seat when he is.
Ryan, thank you. Ryan, do you want to see about one or do you want me to jump in?
No, I'm happy to get it framed up while you bring up the presentation. So yeah, the only ped and bike improvement project. And again, credit to our team here and Carrie especially. When I handed this to her a while back, it was a few $1 million to do some bike ped improvements at the intersection. It has since ballooned to being more of a utility project than a bike ped project. So multiple components to this. We have some long-standing sewer issues, long-standing water issues. The Aubrey water line work that's happening all on the west side of town is upsizing lines, and it eventually feeds through this intersection. So we want to upsize the lines through this intersection as well. But yeah, some pretty exciting cross sections here in terms of what we're going to do from a safety standpoint. So yeah, I think I'll hand it over to you.
Sounds good. Yeah, thank you. So I think it was mentioned, we have 3 separate motions that we're planning to take to council next week. So the first being, and the largest, is the K&E construction contract, and that was done with the best value procurement method. And we do have a 4% contingency request tied to that for council or city manager to approve that 4% contingency. So you'll see that on our financial slide in more detail. And then the second motion being a construction contract administration services, and we selected Dow for that contract. And that's kind of like similar like construction management, just support when we're actually in construction. And then the last one being an amendment number 4 with parametrics for final design and construction support services. And that's just tied to increases in scope and requests that the city has had as we've gotten into the details on this project. So just highlighting where this project is located. It's on the north end of town. It's on the road that changes names constantly from Portland Ave to Old Houston Ave. And there's a lot going on this east-west route. It is a key route for walking and biking. And so it was prioritized by TBOC and adopted into the GeoBond CIP a few years ago. And then to the west is the Portland Ave corridor improvements that's ongoing, and then future kind of projects to the east on this route. And this is some background of specifically the project improvements limitations. So it goes from Deschutes River to 2nd Street. And I pulled up this map because it kind of highlights all the different things we're tracking and what all got pulled into this project. So the kind of blue teal color was the original GeoBond improvements for Olney that was highlighted. And that was a safe crossing at 2nd Street and protected bike lanes under US 97, as well as right turn hook crashes, countermeasures at Wall Street intersection. So that was the GeoBond specific background. Then we grouped some of the GeoBond stuff that was meant for Portland Ave into this project due to the kind of nearby proximity. There's also identified synergy projects for water in the 2021 Integrated Water System Master Plan. So that's also from the river to 2nd Street, some upsize in water pipe there and replacement of cast iron pipe. And we're going under the railroad, boring the water line pipe, as well as sewer line improvements that were identified in the 2014 wastewater collection system master plan. Similar story, just upsizing the sewer for future growth and going under the railroad with a boring under. Yeah. So I think that's everything on this slide. There is a lot of work happening at this transportation, with the transportation CIP at the railroad crossing. And that was identified separately from the GeoBond improvements. And we're doing some minor safety improvements at the Deschutes River Trail crossing. So the scope, I kind of simplified this, but this applies for all three of the contracts. Each of them are helping deliver this scope here. So spoke to most of these improvements on the last slide. There's also some stormwater that's happening, and then you'll see just the kind of GeoBond specific language there at the bottom of the list. And these are some images from our final design roll plot. So on the upper right is the Wall Street intersection, and that's a dedicated user intersection. So that's so that people walking and biking all have their own dedicated space that's clear to everyone, as well as vehicle users. And those corner island pieces help with that right turn hook crash. It helps people to see people walking and biking at a 90-degree angle and slowing speeds in the intersection. We also have some lighting improvements at the intersection and striping. And then the rail crossing here is on the bottom left. That's just an image from what we're doing on the surface for the railroad crossing, as well as the utilities. You can just make out the water line, the new water line and new sewer line. And then bottom right, this is the Second Street and Olney safe crossing intersection design. So our schedule, we're here going into the construction season for 2025 and prepping for that. And previously we were in the design, and the yellow diamonds are when we went to council previously.
Got stars in the last.
Make our shapes consistent. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Council checking.
Okay.
Yeah, so here on the top right, those are these, the three motions with that 4% contingency highlighted. We do anticipate that being enough to kind of catch us if there's unexpected issues with the design or anything that comes up. And yeah, and the left is the project estimate by fund.
Just to hit on that real quick, you can see 4.6 from the GEO bond, but 3.6 from the sewer fund, another 3.3 from the water fund. So yeah, there's a lot of investment underground in this corridor that we've been trying to find a way to get this done for 10 years, and Carrie was voluntold to make it happen. So she's making it work. So yeah, this went from a $4 to $5 million project to almost $16 million project, which is pretty incredible.
We are hoping to do pretty much everything that's needed in the corridor and then get out of there and not have to come back in and come back in 5 years and do more sewer, more stormwater. So it may be an intersection upgrade way down the line, like 15, 20 years down the line of the intersection. But for now, trying to rip off the Band-Aid for everything. And the GeoBond funding here is made up of the Portland, ITS funding, and Olney.
Yeah, I should have asked you to have a cross section cut through. I was thinking, because it's hard if you want to flip back a couple slides, you can't really see it wonderfully, but there's protected bike lanes. So those red lines, or on the lower left one, that's curb, basically. So
For landscaping.
or landscaping. So it's not a vertical delineator. It's not even a Dura curb on Wilson. This is a dedicated in-ground built like a normal curb would be.
So it's like curb height.
So that'll really differentiate the users, as Carrie was talking about. And then, yeah, the interaction at the wall intersection is going to be very, very different. If you've driven through the 3rd and Wilson intersection,
Yeah. So
it's going to be along the same lines in terms of islands out in the intersection to keep the cars from making those sharp the turns and moving those right hook crashes, because we have had a fatality at this intersection.
Yeah.
And so
And it does remove the right turn lane from going north on.
Yeah, we combined our 3-lane and right turn lane and looked at that sun like from a volume capacity standpoint, and it does delay vehicles a little bit. At this point, we chose the safety option here versus that small delay for vehicles, given it's a key route and low stress route intersection, both in all directions.
When this is under construction, what will the closures and traffic patterns look like?
So this is kind of our anticipated construction schedule for 2025. We are anticipating full intersection closures at Wall Street and Second Street. The one at Wall Street is a little longer than the one at Second Street. Looking like a few months, so planning roughly for like February through May. Full closure at Wall Street and getting that open by June. That might be reduced a little bit, and there might be some times where we're able to open up like one or two directions of travel and work on one side, but as a whole, needing to close that intersection down. And then we'll be doing lots of business access through Olney Avenue, but not anticipating to provide like through traffic. That just helps us get this project done more efficiently and faster if we're not providing through access. But all businesses will have access and be maintaining that, and then detour wise using like Greenwood, Third Street and Revere.
And I mean, I know it's a lot of pain, but the Portland will be also, so that all that water line work on Aubrey and the closures that we're experiencing now, that'll be done, right, by the spring, and then we're repaving that, doing some intersection improvements. So next summer, just think
Yeah.
about the glorious
How wonderful.
new, brand new pavement, safer, all the things. So, but it's going to be continued disruption for another 6 months, probably.
Are there any other like crosstown routes that are going to be at the same time? I can't think of any, but
Well, no, this is why we've
Yeah.
had extensive meetings internally, Megan, on to
Yeah.
make sure that we're avoiding double.
Yeah.
So Franklin, and this is, I think we're thinking of maybe doing Franklin in the spring, but with this schedule,
Yeah.
no, we aren't going to do I think we might do a portion of Franklin Way on the east side in the fall after this project, but it won't involve, it'll be a portion of Franklin, not the undercrossings near downtown. So we're very sensitive of not detour on detour. So, which sometimes means some of these projects the timelines have to slide a little bit to accommodate that. So we're not just going full bore blindly and disrupting
Two east-west routes at the same.
major routes at the same time.
Yeah, because there's more coming. Yeah, to your point, Megan, there's Butler Market improvements, there's Olney improvements, there's Franklin improvements, there's Bear Creek improvements, there's Reed Market improvements, all stacking up here. So fortunately, as Eric described, we've got the work on Second Street between Franklin and Greenwood going now. That's going to go into the spring. And Carrie's goal is to have the north-south movement on Wall Street back open before we do anything other impactful, to say something like Franklin. And if we did Franklin, it'd be like 5th to 8th, it'd be on the east side of Third Street. So you always have Third Street as that main detour corridor. But yeah, next couple of years are gonna be busy.
that's a really good looking intersection though, I have to say. It's really exciting.
And you haven't mentioned this yet, Carrie, but maybe just a reminder, mostly for the public, but even that's about what happened from a public involvement process.
Yeah.
Who engage. My understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, the design here has generally pretty broad support from different players in the community, although it's probably not perfect in some places for people. But
Yeah, so kind of during this alternatives analysis phase of 2023, we showed the public 3 different options. And they were pushing more for what we're doing today. That was the consensus. And we had an open house that was both virtual and in person, and had a Spanish translation option on both of those. So we got feedback, I think, from around 100 participants at that first open house. And yeah, there was just a lot of calls for separated dedicated space for each user and less combined space. And at that time, we were showing more of combined, like on-street bike lanes or like not much treatment at the intersection. And we kept hearing again and again, like the intersections is where people are dying. That's where the issues of safety are present. So we took another look and then moved towards the great separated bike lanes that we're proposing today with improvements, as well as those kind of next level intersection treatments. And then we went back to the public in 2024 during our design with a virtual open house, and the large majority of that was in support of what we were showing and in favor of the shift that we made to do larger safety improvements on this key route.
I think this is an award-worthy project and just really impressed with how complex it is with so many different elements, but also being creative. And I think it's so exciting to see elements that we've never seen in the city before. So I'm just really impressed with this project. In anticipation of the additional funding conversation, is there anything to add on that?
Yeah, some of the background there, that is a lot of additional costs related to the rail improvements, and that's both the surface improvements and going underground. The railroad just, we got more requests from the railroad to add like cathodic protection and just increased design costs there, as well as increased actual like infrastructure there. So that's where that largely is due to.
Hey,
And I presume
can you help with that?
add this on to
Yeah,
another
sure.
West or something.
Not sure.
Yeah, I mean, we're not eliminating a crossing here. We're just trying to enhance the safety. So yeah, if you go walk it today, it's scary because it doesn't feel like you're even on a sidewalk. You're basically walking on the road over the tracks. So yeah, we'll still have a crossing here, but yeah, there's the cost to bore underneath the rail for our water and our sewer lines and the surface level improvements. That work alone is a couple $1 million to right away.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Other questions, comments? Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
I think I see Lisa waiting.
Yeah, I think
on
she's
the
on now. We can tag her in.
sign. Very good.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Gary.
We'll move on.
It might be Megan. But it's not muted.
Mute myself there. I just turned it off.
Oh.
Hello?
I think you have your
It is?
speakers off.
Yeah.
Great.
Difference.
So better? Perfect. Thank you.
There we go.
Thank you. Welcome, Lisa. We'll move on to your item, the Aubrey Glen and West Side Pump Station construction contract.
So yeah, as she's bringing that up, we didn't mention it with Carrie's project, but just a stone's throw away on the other side of the bridge is our West Side Lift Station. So Carrie and Lisa have been working in concert to make sure that the work can all get done during that same closure period. Didn't have an additional closure period. So. Yeah, that's perfect.
So my name's Lisa Camilli. I'll be presenting this afternoon on motion that will be before City Council next week for the approval of a contract with Emery and Sons Construction for the completion of the Aubrey Glen and West Side Pump Station Improvement Project. The total amount of that proposed contract currently is $5.7 million. I want to give you a little bit of background on the decision-making, the origins of the project, the 2014 Collection System Master Plan. Some of the final outcomes from that included the concept of a gravity first system throughout the city. That system essentially works to either decommission or improve existing pump stations. In the master plan, Aubrey Glen, both Aubrey Glen and West Side pump stations were identified for improvements. And the intention of the improvements are to improve the redundancy, the resiliency, and also worker safety at both of those sites. Both locations currently are not in existing right-of-way. They're on private property. Therefore, and both of those locations are zoned residential. And so because of that, we needed to go through a conditional use permit on both locations. And then specifically with West Side Pump Station, we were required to obtain also a water overlay zone permit.
Could you say a little more about resiliency and worker safety, how that works with this project?
Sure, yeah. Essentially, worker safety, there are a lot, and we'll get into this a little bit more, but for example, the West Side Pump Station was built in the 1980s, went operational in 1980. And so a lot of the codes have changed since that time. A lot of the worker safety associated work has to do with improving HVAC, so there's better ventilation for workers who are working down because they're below grade in many instances. So improving safety associated with that. Also changing out some of the baseline code things like handrails and clearances around things. In addition to electrical improvements that limit the workers' exposure to potential electrical issues.
And resiliency?
So resiliency, essentially, the idea of resiliency has to do more with how quickly, if something fails, how quickly you can get something back online. For example, in this project, you'll see in the West Side project, we're adding some componentry to the force main that comes out of West Side Pump Station that allows for, if there's a problem with the force main, if someone decides they want to put a hole in it or it corrodes and there's a hole in the pipe, we will have currently where there's no option but to throw some duct tape around it and just try to keep it operating. The only other option is to turn off everyone's water, which is usually not a good idea. So essentially what we're doing is we're installing a port right at the pump station that you can temporarily bypass around the force main across the bridge over near Wall Street where Carrie's project begins essentially. So that would allow the city, it's kind of a combination of redundancy as well as resiliency, but it allows us to be operational much more quickly.
Thank you.
Just a little history on this pump station, we actually did have an incident early 2000s, resulted in a litigation. The Riverside Apartments there was overflow into the river. And, it was before my time, but you might remember.
Vaguely, but
No,
I remember it during the CSNP process.
I love hearing about that stuff because I feel like from a resident's perspective, you hear about when things go wrong in other cities, and this is what you do instead of just hoping it never goes wrong in your city.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that background.
Sure. Wanted to just make it clear that both West Side and Aubrey Glen, they're two completely separate pump stations. They're separate locations. It's under a single contract with Emery and Sons, but they are not physically connected. The only connection is that the Aubrey Glen pump station, the sewage from that does eventually end up in the West Side pump station. So first, I'll give you a little bit of background on the Aubrey Glen station. It's located, you can see the little red dot there. That's located right at the city limits on the property that belongs to the Aubrey Glen Golf Course. It's immediately adjacent to Putnam Road. Currently, just give you a little background on that. It was constructed in approximately the early 1990s. It was constructed by a developer, and then the city inherited it at some point in time. It currently serves the Aubrey Glen Golf Course HOA area, as well as significant portions of the northwest hillside of Aubrey Butte. The daily or the instantaneously, I should say, flow capacity for that pump station is 800 gallons per minute. And the average daily flows currently are about 180,000 gallons per day. Here we've got the West Side pump station. You can see it's immediately adjacent to the Deschutes River. And that includes the waterway overlay zone, which is 100 feet from, I believe, top of bank. And so this is the system's largest pump station other than at the water reclamation facility. You can also see represented by the purple line, there's a 16-inch force main that comes out of the pump station and pushes sewage to the east, down Portland and eventually down Olney. And that is where the tie-in between what Carrie's project, the Olney Improvement Project, and my project will include. Essentially, for Carrie's portion of the project, this force main will be cut in half and it will be converted from force main to a gravity line. Because again, we're a city gravity first system. So that's sort of the focus associated with that. Little background on the pump station itself. Went operational around 1980. It was built by the city of Bend. It serves over half of all of the west side of Bend. There were significant improvements made in 2005. The ultimate pumping capacity, instantaneous capacity, is about 4,450 gallons per minute. And currently the average daily flows are just under 1 million gallons per day. Additionally, the 16-inch force main that I referred to earlier, that's currently at about 2,100 linear feet, that will be cut to about 1,100 linear feet at the end of Carrie's project. And then also to give you a little bit of more information, go back to Aubrey Glen now at the golf course there, just outline some of the items of work. We're replacing non-compliant, non-code compliant electrical and mechanical systems and equipment. We'll be placing a new communication antenna at the site. If you're familiar with that area at all, you know it sort of sits in a sinkhole. It's quite a distance away from where our primary communications are. So we'll be improving access to communication for any alarming systems, what we call our SCADA systems.
Just leading into that for you. Yeah, right.
Exciting. So there'll be some connection in that
Yeah.
also. Additionally, there's a trailer mounted emergency generator on site. The issue with that generator is that if the power goes down in the pump station, someone has to go out there and actually start that generator for things to start moving again. What this project will do, it'll establish a permanent generator that will have an automatic transfer switch, which will trigger if there's a problem with the power grid. Will also be currently the electrical controls are in what they call the dry well, which is below grade. That's a worker safety issue. They have to climb down a fairly steep ladder. It's kind of confined space. You've got water and electrical right next to each other. The idea is to bring a lot of those electrical controls out of the building into a separate sort of 200 square foot building that would sit just south of the existing pump station. Additionally, we'll be adding a flow meter vault because the current flow meter, we are doubting the accuracy of it, and to improve the possibility for accuracy, we need to add a flow meter vault. And then of course, surface restoration and landscaping requirements associated with a conditional use permit. At West Side, again, we'll be replacing non-code compliant electrical and mechanical equipment. There in the 2005 improvements, so currently there's 4 pumps at the pump station. 2005, they replaced 2 of those pumps. This project will replace the other 2 pumps to make them more current. Additionally, we'll be adding what's called a dedicated backup system, which is actually a whole separate system that will sit outside of the building that can pump the capacity of the projected capacity, that 4,450 gallons per minute. It's almost a tertiary system, backup system. And the thinking behind that is this station is the criticality is very high. Additionally, we'll be replacing the existing generator with a new generator. We'll be adding a secondary driveway as an access point for maintenance crews, so they can get it in there and what they call vector out. I'm not sure if you all know what a vector is. but it basically sucks things.
Mhm.
And to be able to clean out the wet well that hasn't really been cleaned for quite some time.
Mhm.
Be able to access that more readily to improve maintainability. Also,
Get in there now, because there's only one driveway. Right?
there is one drive, I don't, so a Vector truck is pretty
Yeah.
large, you may have noted. To get around to the wet well, you would have to drive immediately, you'd have to drive on existing infrastructure to be able to access where to put sort of the hose, should we say, into the wet well. And the idea of this is to provide, it's actually going to be pervious pavement, pervious pavers, so they have better access, so they don't have to potentially damage existing infrastructure to be able to access the site. Additionally, and this also pairs with the Olney Improvement Project, we'll be adding bypass capability, as I mentioned earlier, that resiliency portion. We're adding the ability to draw sewage out of the force main, move it across the bridge and back into the force main, and bypassing that about 1,100 linear feet of pipe if we ever had a problem, particularly around the river. So that will also be part of this project. And then, of course, surface restoration and landscaping requirements associated with the permits. Proposed schedule on this is hopefully council approval, December the 18th, with an notice to proceed in early January. I will note that Emery and Sons is very ready and raring to go, which I'm thankful for in my own way. So we do anticipate them moving on site at the earliest possible time. And then the force main work, that's what I'm calling the force main work, is what's called Schedule A in the contract. That is the work in the existing right of way, as well as that bypass port on the exterior of the west side building, essentially. That we have a 90-day period in which the contractor is required to complete that work. And then with West Side and Aubrey Glen, we're in the process of working with the contractor because we're not in an executed contract yet. We don't have a full schedule, but we anticipate that the work would be done by May of 2026, with project closeout by August of 2026. And then you'll see on the project budget, so tonight's ask for this afternoon's ask for the approval of the Emery and Sons contract in the amount of about $5.7 million, brings us to a total potential cost of about $7.8 million. Currently, we have budgeted $6.2 million. So the city has determined that they're willing to do a transfer of approximately $1.5 million to help augment this existing project. Additionally, this project's funded under the Clean Water State Revolving Fund loan. We went back to, so initially the loan was at about, I want to say it's like 2.8. We went back and asked for 5.3 because we included or added scope at that point in time. They approved the 5.8. We added more scope, partially to kind of help facilitate the work that's happening at Olney. And so now we currently have an approved loan for $5.3 million. We'll be going back to DEQ for an additional approximately $2.5 million to bring the total available funds to $7.8 million. That's what I know.
Thank you, Lisa. So I was just checking to see, it looks like the city of Bend owns the lot that the West Side pump station is on. And it looks like there's already 3 driveway curb cutouts there. Is it possible to use one of the existing curb cutouts with some kind of other route to access the place where the back pump truck would need to go? My concern is driveways pose a risk to people walking and biking, and under state law, they lose the right of way anytime there's a driveway or a curb cutout. So anything that we can do to minimize or reduce them, I think is a benefit. And, you know, drivers sometimes get confused and think, well, I can turn in here and turn around, or, you know, whatever the case may be. So any thoughts on trying to eliminate the need for what would look like a 4th driveway on one property?
Right, yeah. As you go to the site, you'll see there's really, to the pump station itself, there's really only one access, and then there's a hill.
Mhm.
So, and there's no roadway coming down from other access points. So knowing that there really is only one single access, unless you get very creative about how you actually move vehicles from the higher level to the lower level.
Here's the Google Street View.
Mhm.
It's just,
So no chance that the grade would accommodate another driveway to connect to an existing, or, you know, could we eliminate one of the existing driveways and then still maintain 3 driveways? Because it's not a very long property. And it just seems excessive to have 4 driveways, when, I don't know, is there a possibility to have 3? But that's
Sure,
the
yeah.
question.
Yeah. Well, fair enough. I think that would require the input of operations and maintenance. They're the ones, so they stockpile material there on just to the west of the site.
Mhm.
I don't want to speak for them and what their needs are.
just so I'm
What are you
tracking,
saying? There's-
you're saying, because there's only one access to Portland.
Right.
There's they must have some access off of First Street back here.
This is a driveway and this is a driveway.
Oh, this is not our property. I don't think. Is that?
Ours goes back.
It does go back there? Oh,
Up above on the
Yeah.
top of.
oh,
Yeah.
The one
okay.
I'm looking at is like an alley sort of thing looking.
Oh, okay. I was thinking, the only formal one is this one, but then there's these 2 kind of informal ones over here. Yeah.
It just seems like we'd be adding another driveway when there's already a series of driveways, and I'm wondering.
Well, yeah, is it possible to, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah,
Move
maybe
one
move
to,
this over there. Yeah.
substitute another or something. I just,
It's,
Just
I
ask.
think it's a fair question and it's,
Yeah,
for to Ryan on
Yeah,
this, but
we can go back and talk to our water services team again. They've just expressed to us from the main access point, the one
Yeah.
that they use to get to the wet well back here,
right.
it almost requires them kind of backing
Yeah.
up into it.
they
I
don't
could
have
see
the
that.
turning radius.
And yeah, they can't turn around within the site. So this other access point would be, you know, a little bit further, like basically right where
Right.
you're looking at here. So they can basically do like the U-turn horseshoe kind of driveway.
Right.
But yeah, we can go back and revisit it with them. But yeah, there's a slope up to this higher elevation on the property.
The one thing I would consider,
I'm not sure what we're doing there.
because I understand your concern
That's all right.
regarding the driveway accesses. You know, one thing that
it's almost
may
like
be able to work out would
alley or
be
something.
Yeah.
if you cut off the existing driveway,
There's the tree.
the newly constructed driveway may be able, if we have the turning radiuses, et cetera,
so-
may be able to accommodate the, you know, because they have to be able to move in, back out and leave all through the
Right,
same.
right. Yeah.
Currently, they, you know, with this proposed improvement, they would be able to just circle back through it.
Right.
It just offers more options, but I could visualize, at least at this point in time, we'd have to actually look at the possibility of eliminating the existing driveway and then moving that to a little bit to the west.
It'd be great to just consider it. Look at it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Good point.
Yeah. Questions?
I was just gonna say, I think Lisa that Councilor Mendez's question about safety and redundancy and like talking about that a little bit more, just for the public, I think it's important part of the story. Like we've had problems here in the past.
There was a
You know,
fire
just-
there not long ago.
Yeah, I mean, it just helps people see like the why project, right?
Right.
Because, I mean, I get, you know, you get it and you're in the details of it all the time, but everybody else.
we're doing this to avoid this and then show some terrible.
To activate people's fear is that.
Dig up some of those photos from 10 years ago.
That'll work well.
Yeah, no, that might be.
I mean, there are two, I guess, I'll ask you, there's worker safety and then there's public safety. And
I think both
two
are
different
important.
things.
I think so,
So
yeah.
so
I
you're
mean,
saying
just
you want to
briefly-
address sort
Just
of both.
briefly talking about them, what they mean, just giving a little more music to it, because it's part of the why we're doing the project.
No, I think there's I mean, in terms of worker safety, there's sort of the assumption and perception that the city has an obligation and does a good job of taking care of its staff and contractors who are asked to perform these kinds of services on behalf of the public. But this is part of that obligation, and I wouldn't feel comfortable asking someone to do something in exchange for their safety to serve the public benefit. So there's, obviously we can't eliminate all risks, but I do think it's a good point to make clear that this is part of upholding that obligation that we have to try to mitigate those risks. And certainly the public benefit in terms of you take for granted.
No poop in the river.
You flush the toilet and you don't think about it. This is a big part of that too.
Sure.
I feel like this is in part, levels of public trust tend to be higher for local governments, and this is a part of that. We take a lot of stuff for granted.
Anything else?
Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks, Lisa.
Lisa.
Okay, so as we alluded to, the next topic on the agenda is the skater replacement project. If you wouldn't mind kicking us off, and if you don't already have the slide, introduce themselves as well, that'd be great.
Absolutely.
While you're getting set up, I'll just plug that, my understanding for this, council motion will actually be on the consent agenda. So there is at this point no, plan to have this presentation at the actual council meeting on the 18th.
Thank you, Justin.
All right, well. Good afternoon. I promise that Ryan and I didn't coordinate and talk about it before. And say, hey, let's sell our projects, like going at it together. Juan Almeida, your friendly neighborhood City of Bend IT director. I'm joined here by Aubrey Sheridan with the project management office, project manager there. And Jeff Floyd, IT manager for industrial control operations and network systems in the IT department. And today we have a contract for software procurement and implementation services of a supervisory controls and data acquisitions software system. Yes, that's a mouthful. That's why it's commonly referred to as SCADA. Next slide. Oh, we're already there. Thank you. The contract value is $1,556,057. It's a 2-year contract with Jacobs Engineering Group, which is a Dallas, Texas-based company with a prominent presence in Corvallis and the Portland metro area. Also a vendor that the city has utilized in the past. The contract is scheduled to be presented for approval in the consent agenda of the upcoming December 18 council meeting, a week from today. Next slide, please. Thank you. So let's demystify SCADA a little bit. So as mentioned earlier, SCADA stands for Supervisory Controls and Data Acquisition. And in simple terms, it's a system that it's used to monitor and control industrial processes. So imagine you have a big factory, right, with lots of machines. SCADA helps you monitor all those machines from one central place. It collects data from the machines, like the temperature or speed, and lets you control them remotely if needed. So think about it as a remote control, in this case, a huge remote control, right? And also a monitoring system for factories, power plants, gas, oil, and in the city's case, water, fresh water and wastewater treatment. Next slide, please. So why are we doing this work? So in 2021, the city commissioned RH2 Engineering as an independent consultant to evaluate the city's existing SCADA system. And some key findings included the
the need for a reliable and stable system, resiliency to the increase in cyber attacks to critical infrastructure systems, consistency in vendor support, and a reduction in system complexity with increased scalability to account for the city's expected growth. SCADA systems have evolved to include powerful analytic capabilities that can significantly enhance industrial operations, including real-time monitoring and alerts, predictive maintenance, root cause analysis, operational efficiency, and enhanced decision-making. Next slide is our project schedule, and Aubrey and Jeff have been in the trenches in every meeting throughout the last year or so through multiple solicitations, so I'll let them speak to it.
Thank you, Juan. Appreciate the introduction. Again, I'm Aubrey. Very nice to meet you all. So this project, as Juan said, this started back in 2021, right? With RH2 coming in and really evaluating our system and trying to offer the city some recommendations. From that, it was decided that maybe IT and the project management office would come together to work on this because this is a very large project, complex and very important to our community. We started in October by soliciting proposals for a new software platform. We ended up finding that there were two software platforms that the project team evaluated equally. So they didn't, it was just equal. And so we decided at that time to move forward to the procurement, to looking for the solicitation for the systems integrator, because what we have found with the current SCADA system is that due to lack of support from the integrators, the system has been built with some inconsistencies across the city, which make it more difficult for staff to operate it because there are different ways of operating the different. So that being said, we found it was very important for us to find an integrator that we liked working with and that was credentialed to implement the software program of their choice. And when I say their choice, we basically said, here are the two platforms we're considering, and we want you as the subject matter experts to evaluate our system and then let us know what system you feel would be best for the city of Bend and for our future growth. And so that is all part of this project. And that is why we actually moved to solicit for the integrator before selecting the software platform. They will be giving us that recommendation after the first phase of the project. So we've already gone through contract negotiations and we've been working very closely with the Jacobs Engineering project manager. And so now we're just waiting to be presented to council for approval of this contract so that we can kick off the project in January. It's anticipated that, as I mentioned before, this project is going to be split up into 3 phases and will end up completing in December of 2026. And the way that we have it broken out in these 3 phases is that phase 1 is going to be about 2 months long. And that's going to be Jacobs coming in and evaluating our system and going to each one of our facilities and seeing what's there, what needs to be upgraded, and start developing a plan. From there, they will end up working largely from their virtual environment over in Corvallis, where they have a location, and they will build out the SCADA system. So they're going to be planning and coming up with how, let me go back, because after that first task, they are going to recommend the software. And so we'll know whether we're going with the Rockwell factory talk or inductive ignition. Okay. So from there, they will start developing a plan. We will learn what upgrades we need in terms of hardware as well. And there will be discussions regarding our IT and OT networks and that architecture. Okay, so this is a very complex project. But the goal of this is to ensure, again, we're going to bring up resiliency, the cybersecurity attacks, and protecting our water system and our community. So after the planning phase is over, really 2026 is going to be focused on implementing that system. The plan is to build it in parallel with the existing SCADA system to ensure that it is functioning properly before we have our cutover date, because that will be very critical and coordinated piece of this project. So this project is going to take 2 years, but we've been working on it for about 5.
And just to highlight, this project will be on the consent agenda for the next meeting, although it's a little bit over $1 million. Unless you had some questions, we really didn't want to, this is a security system, so we weren't necessarily wanting to go through this in great detail.
No, I was gonna
unless you-
ask, do we have a mechanism to ask about things like cybersecurity while still upholding public meeting and public record requirements?
Yeah, I mean, I think just in general, I think our specific kind of ways that we mitigate for that, I don't know if we want to put that out there. But I'm always happy to connect you with we have somebody who specializes in cybersecurity. He'd be happy, more than happy to talk to you about any questions that you have. And he can walk through it in great detail, just one-on-one.
Yeah, sounds good.
There's also public records exemptions for some records related to security
Okay.
around that. But as far as this is a public meeting, so if you have questions about
I mean,
contract and the project, that really.
some of the concerns would be things like, we have a picture of even the operating system on there that might be used. Someone could identify that and say, oh, I see they're using this system. That's one step, makes it one step easier. If we pick a vendor that then, if they disclose what system we end up adopting, that's another step closer to making it easier. And so just, I would appreciate following up on that anyway.
Yeah, certain things like those were part of our RFPs included NDAs. So vendors who wanted to bid, they were subject to NDAs in order for us to share any further information about the system. So we are trying to be very careful about what we release. Again, just because we've seen the increase on attacks on critical infrastructure worldwide. Yeah.
Thank you.
And the integrator part, I mean, maybe I'm gonna go down rabbit holes, but is because at certain locations, we're using other pieces of software and the SCADA part's got to talk to them. Is that kind of what you're getting at? Am I understanding that right? Or
I think.
It's a little more complex than that. For instance, I believe up at the water filtration facility, we have a system called PAL system, and that there's no other integrator that can work on that. And so it limits us to our abilities to be able to integrate with anything else or to be able to change the system, make any alterations. And we currently have 4 separate systems, because the water filtration facility is also broken out into collections. So that's 2 separate systems. And then we have distribution, and then we have the water reclamation facility. They all provide different services, obviously. The system monitors the pH levels of the treatment facility. So basically, we have found, and RH2 found, that we need to have a consistent system throughout, and it needs to be easy for the water operators to use. We also don't currently have any documentation on our current system and how it's been built out, making it very challenging for our water operators or any integrators to come in and work on it. There's a subject matter expert really that has been here helping to do those integrations and has been a part of it. But in terms of that, when that person retires, we don't want to be caught in a bad spot. So this is a really great opportunity to get Jacobs Engineering in here. They have so much experience, and they're going to build out a system that will ensure the safety of the community and our water district.
just it's gonna replace some of those.
Basically moving away from the homegrown.
Yeah, I get it. It's a little more patchworky and this is.
Thank you. Yeah.
I can say that, you probably don't.
Yeah, right.
And the integrator word is a little bit misleading here. Yes, it's an integrator kind of from the sense where, with software, you integrate 2 applications together. And this one is more on when Aubrey talks about OT, operational technology, is integrating hardware with software, but it's those subject matter experts that's all they do. Right? They integrate these systems together so that they can work. So it is at a very high complex level, that work that they're doing. And like Eric was saying, yes, this is something that we've grown over the years. We've been very lucky to have somebody who's very dedicated to the system. But again, with time, and we know that those systems are great until the person who has been maintaining them for years decides to retire, right? So, yeah.
If I might also add, this is a great opportunity for the IT networking employees to learn about our SCADA architecture and for everybody to begin being educated in how it works, because they're going to be helping with setting it up. And so this is going to be a really great educational opportunity for not only them, but then also for the Icons group to learn how it's built out so that they can also support it.
I don't expect an answer now. In fact, I would ask not to get one now, but a question that I do have is, I think one of the virtues of having a patchwork independent system is that it's potentially, and I'm saying this as a non-expert who's not necessarily familiar with it, but thinking about like voting systems, we have a lot of frustration because we don't get results in a timely manner, but we have this sort of creaky old decentralized system that takes a lot of training for the purposes of actually undergoing and doing all of the collection that's necessary for elections. But if we were to integrate them, there's the trade-off there, because then you have more vulnerability in a different way. So I feel like I do want to hear more about the kind of trade-offs in terms of, I understand the desire to integrate for the purpose of training and having everybody be on the same page and be able to operate, different facilities. But I guess I worry about, I want to hear more probably offline about what integration means in terms of risk of would they be networked or, things like that. So I don't want to hear now, but that's kind of some of the
I think
things.
that's a great follow-up with Adam. So we'll follow up and have Adam kind of just connect with you and just talk about overall our security strategy.
Thank you.
To address your question there. Yeah.
And also, I just wanted to say, I'd love to be present if.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, please.
Because there are going to be some changes, including separating our IT and OT network.
Okay.
Which is huge for cybersecurity and resiliency. And so we can go further into those details.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Aubrey, it might be worthwhile also mentioning that although, yes, we're going to rely heavily on this integrator and their expertise to give us a recommendation and then to move forward with the implementation. Part of the project is also there's going to be another solicitation later for a commissioning agent. And we want to bring in a third-party expert that will be able to evaluate those recommendations and say yay or nay. Ultimately, we're trying to get through to an industry standard best practices system, and having that third-party commissioning agent will be key to this. And we know that big agencies and also private sector industries, they rely heavily on those commissioning agents. Places like data centers, like Meta and Apple, and those they use commissioning agents all the time for those reasons.
Well, I mean, in the new Public Works campus has a commissioning agent, they have very list, and they're commissioning that same concept. It's just software. And just so you know, that commissioning agent RFP is in review and will be going out before the end of December. It's going to be a informal solicitation. Thank you. So it will need to be out for very long. We're hoping to schedule, get through contracts and hopefully start up at the same time. Yeah, all the team members together.
Yeah. Okay, anything else? Any other questions, comments?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate your presentation. So last item, I'll just move through quickly. We just wanted to make a quick note of some of the other contracts that are scheduled to go to council on December 18th, but warrant items on the full agenda just in consent, and we don't have presentations for them. The first one being the Outback Facility Plan update. The second one on the list is Diamond Parking Services Contract Amendment. That item is actually getting pulled from the council agenda. So that one will not be presented to council on December 18th. And then the last one we had was the accident management services. Were there any questions on any of those contracts? Okay, anything else for the good of the order? Very Very good. I will adjourn at 2:27 PM. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.